And continuing with this book that we've gone over a lot in past videos, and this is Atlantis The Antediluvian World by Ignatius Donnelly. All right, and this is from 1882. We're in chapter 7. It says here, the origin of our alphabet. One of the most marvelous inventions for the advancement of mankind is the phonetic alphabet, or a system of signs representing the sounds of human speech. Without it, our present civilization could scarcely have been possible, according to him, right? No solutions of the origin of our European alphabet has yet been obtained. They don't know the origin. They can't. It's all guesswork. We can trace it back from nation to nation and form to form until we reach the Egyptians and the archaic forms of the Phoenicians, Hebrews, and Cushites. But beyond this, the light fails us. All right, so this is the only where they can trace language to try to see who created the writing, right? The Egyptians spoke of their hieroglyphic system of writing not as their own invention, but as the language of the gods. Like, oh, that's not ours. That's the gods gave us that. The gods from where? Atlantis, right? From the Westerners, right? From the old world. Lenormand and Cheval, Ancient History of the East, Volume 2, page 208. The gods were doubtless their highly civilized ancestors, the people of Atlantis, like I just said, right? That's their gods. They're people of Atlantis, which is over here in America. All right, you paying attention, right? Who, as we shall hereafter see, became the gods of many of the Mediterranean races. Now, according to the Phoenicians, the art of writing was invented by Tontus or Tot, all right? So these became the gods of all these people, right? The people of Atlantis were real people. They became personified as what? Gods. According to the Phoenicians, the art of writing was invented by Tontus or Tot. All right, we got that in my Tot videos, right? Who this guy is basically Tot, whom the Egyptians called Thoth, right? And the Egyptians said that it was invented by Thoth or Thoth, same thing, same history, same person, who himself said he came from Atlantis in the Emerald Tablets, right? Otherwise called the first Hermes. He's also Hermes. Thoth is Hermes. Thoth is all these epithets, as you call it, in which we clearly see that both the Phoenicians and Egyptians referred the invention to a period older than their own separate political existence. All right, he's pointing out something very big. The Phoenicians and the Egyptians, who are given credit for writing, right? They, even in their own history, they say it's actually older than them. It was given to them. They inherited writing from the so-called gods. And to an older nation, not just gods, from which both peoples received it, they both got it from the same people. Because the ancient Egyptians, Egypt was over here in America, and the Phoenicians came out of Canaan. Canaan is America. The promised land is over here. The first Hermes, here referred to afterwards, called Mercury by the Romans. All right, he's also Mercury. That's the same. Thoth was a son of Zeus. So Thoth is the son of Zeus and Maya. Maya, his mom was what? An Atlantean? She was indigenous? Who's the Zeus guy? Is this a fallen angel or a half-breed? One of the giants? And it says here, Maya was a daughter of Atlas. I remember Atlan or Atlas, that's a Nahuatl word. This is the same Maya whom the Abbé Brasseur de Bourbon identifies with the Maya of Central America. The same Maya is a Maya of Central America. All this Greek mythology they've always been talking about, the true old world over here, so-called Atlantis/America. All right, you guys following along? Sir William Drummond on his Origins said, there seems to be no way of accounting either for the early use of letters among so many different nations, or for the resemblance which existed between some of the graphic systems employed by those nations, than by supposing hieroglyphical writing. If I may be allowed to the term to have been in use among the Sabaists in the first ages after the flood, when Sabaism, planet worship, was the religion of almost every country that was yet inhabited. Sir Henry Rawlinson says, so great is the analogy between the first principles of the science of writing, as it appears to have been pursued in Chaldeans, right? And as we can actually trace its progress in Egypt, all right? So remember what we learned about in the Queen Mu book, Chaldeans being Maya, or their language being very similar to the Maya language, their dialects, all those Maya vocables. They're saying the same thing here. Look, they're the ones who pursued it, the Chaldeans, and then it went into Egypt. That we can hardly hesitate to assign the original invention to a period before the Hamitic race had broken up and divided. Before the Hamitic race, the sons of Ham had divided. Before that, language, the writing comes before that. It is not to be believed that such an extraordinary system of sound signs could have been the invention of any one man or even of any one age. Like all our other acquisitions, it must have been the slow growth and accretion of ages. It must have risen step by step from picture writing through an intermediate condition like that of the Chinese, where each word of a thing was represented by a separate sign. The fact that so old and enlightened a people as the Chinese have never reached a phonetic alphabet gives us some indication of the greatness of the people among whom it was invented and the lapse of time before they attained to it. Humboldt says, according to the views which since Champollion's great discovery have been gradually adopted regarding the earlier condition of the development of alphabetical writing, the Phoenician as well as the Semitic characters are to be regarded as a phonetic alphabet that has originated from pictorial writing. All right, letting you know here that before this so-called Paleo-Hebrew, that originated from the Picto, a pictorial writing, Picto, a pictorial writing glyph. All right, the Semitic, where Hebrew comes from, Phonetic, these Phoenician languages, Semitic languages, all right, they came from a pictorial writing, what's painted in these caves, as one in which the ideal signification of the symbols is wholly disregarded and the characters are regarded as mere signs for sounds. Baldwin says in Prehistoric Nations, page 93, the nation that became mistress of the seas established communication with every shore and monopolized the commerce of the known world must have substituted a phonetic alphabet for the hieroglyphics as it gradually grew to this eminence, while isolated Egypt. You see that? So they're saying whoever was in the seas, and who was it, right? The Phoenicians. And I've been saying they only say that the Phoenicians, because they brought the Paleo-Hebrew from America. They were coming from Canaan. They brought that over to the rest of the world. So these people who were in communication with every shore, they monopolized the commerce, and they substituted a phonetic alphabet for the hieroglyphics as it gradually grew to this eminence, while isolated Egypt, less affected by the practical wants and tendencies of commercial enterprise, retained the hieroglyphic system and carried it to a marvelous height of perfection. It must be remembered that some of the letters of our alphabet are inventions of the latter nations. In the oldest alphabets, there was no C, the G taking its place. The Romans converted the G into a C, you hear that? And then finding the necessity for a G sign, made one by adding a tailpiece to the C. You see? The G, look at that. The Greeks added to the ancient alphabet the upsilon, shaped like our V. See the V's? The Greeks added that V, that va, hova, that va. That was Greek. Or Y, even the Y, the ja, or the ja, or that Y, that's Greek. The two forms being used at first indifferently. They added the X sign. They converted the T of the Phoenicians into the TH or theta, Z and S into signs for double consonants. They turned the Phoenician Y, the Jod, the Phoenician Paleo-Hebrew into I, iota, I. The Greeks converted the Phoenician alphabet, which was partly consonantal, into the one purely phonetic, a perfect instrument for the expression of spoken language. The spells. The W was also added to the Phoenician alphabet. The Romans added the Y. At first, I and J were both indicated by the same sound. A sign for J was afterwards added. We have also, in common with other European languages, added a W, that is, double V or W, or the W, right, to represent the W sound. The letters then which we owe to the Phoenicians are A, B, C, D, E, Hiklmnopqrstnz. All that came from Paleo Hebrew, not Phoenician. They brought it out of America. And that came out of what? A pictorial writing before that. If we are to trace out resemblances with the alphabet of any other country, it must be with these signs. Is there any other country to which we can turn which possess a phonetic alphabet in any respect kindred to this phonetic Phoenician alphabet? It cannot be the Chinese alphabet, which has more signs than words. It cannot be the cuneiform alphabet of the Assyria, with its 700 arrow-shaped characters, none of which bear the slightest affinity to the Phoenician letters. It is a surprising fact that we find in Central America a phonetic alphabet, all right? This is in the alphabet of the Mayas, the ancient people of the peninsula of Yucatan, who claim that their civilization came to them across the sea in ships from the east, that is, from the direction of Atlantis. The Mayas succeeded to the Colhuas, who are terminated 1,000 years before the time of Christ. From them they received their alphabet. It has come to us through Bishop Landa, one of the early missionary bishops who confesses to having burnt a great number of Maya books. This same bishop burnt so many books, so why should we trust this guy? Because they contain nothing but the works of the devil. Oh, so now he burned books because it was the devil's work, but then we got to trust what he left. He fortunately, however, preserved for posterity the alphabet of this people we present it herewith. Diego de Landa was the first bishop of Yucatan. He wrote a history of the Mayas and their country, which was preserved in manuscript at Madrid in the library of the Royal Academy of History. It contained a description and explanation of the phonetic alphabet of the Mayas. Landa's manuscript seems to have lain neglect in the library, for little or nothing was heard of it until it was discovered by the French priest Brasseur de Bourbourg, who, by means of it, has deciphered some of the old American writings. He says the alphabet and signs explained by Landa have been to me a Rosetta Stone. Baldwin's Ancient America, page 191, right? A lot of good sources in this book, so let's just look at the alphabet again. So remember, they're letting us know that these are phonetic, these are pictorial writing. They're letting us know here a little hint where those alphabets come out of, where those letters, Phoenician letters, come out of. All right, you take a look at this. Look at this, Ma, Me, or Ma. We got this. You see this sign right here? That's awesome, because we got this in the Queen Mu book about the Mayak. You see that? The Mayak. That's how the Yucatan Peninsula sticks out. Remember, and that was the 2 points. We broke that down in the other video, in the Queen Mu book. This is a whole different person. This is from Bishop Landa. This is a primary source, not Augustus Leplejon. This is Landa's alphabet from North American Antiquities, page 424. When we observe in the table of alphabets of different European nations, which I give herewith, how greatly the forms of the Phoenician letters have been modified, it would surprise us to find any resemblance between the Maya alphabet of 2 or 3 centuries since the ancient European forms. It must, however, be remembered that the Mayas are one of the most conservative peoples in the world. They still adhere with striking pertinacity to the language they spoke when Columbus landed on San Salvador, and it is believed that language is the same as the one inscribed on the most ancient monuments of their country. Senor Pimental says of them, the Indians have preserved this idiom with such tenacity that they will speak no other. It is necessary for the whites to address them in their own language, to communicate with them. It is therefore probable, as their alphabet did not pass from nation to nation as did the Phoenician, that it has not departed so widely from the original forms received from the Colhuas. But when we consider the vast extent of time which has elapsed, and the fact that we are probably without the intermediate stages of the alphabet which preceded the archaic Phoenician, it will be astonishing if we find resemblances between any of the Maya letters and the European forms, even though we concede that they are related. If we find decided affinities between 2 or 3 letters, we may reasonably presume that similar coincidences existed as to many others which have disappeared under the attrition of centuries. The first thought that occurs to us on examining the Landa's alphabet is the complex and ornate character of the letters. Instead of the 2 or 3 strokes which we indicate a sign for a sound, we have here rude pictures of objects. And we find that these are themselves simplifications of older forms. All right, older forms. So this is the table he's going to show us real quick. Let me just finish reading what he was saying. We'll come back to this. Of still more complex character. So that table we're about to see is just what they left when they got here. So there was something older than that, but he's gonna tell us. So it says, take for instance the letter PP in London's alphabet. Here are evidently the traces of a face. The same appear, but not so plainly, in the sign for X, which is. Now, if we turn to the ancient hieroglyphics upon the monuments of Central America, we will find the human face appearing in a great many of them, as in the following, which we copy from the tablet of the cross at Palenque. We take the hieroglyphics from the left-hand side of the inscription. Here it will be seen that out of 7 hieroglyphical figures, 6 contain human faces. And we find that in the whole inscription of the tablet of the cross, there are 33 figures out of 108 that are made up in part of human countenances. We can see, therefore, in the Landa alphabet a tendency to simplification. And this is what we will naturally expect when the emblems, which were probably first intended for religious inscriptions, where they could be slowly and carefully elaborated, were placed in the hands of a busy, active commercial people, such as were the Atlanteans, and afterwards the Phoenicians. Who were the Phoenicians? Atlanteans. What happened to Atlantis? What did they do in Atlantis? Why did it sink? Men with whom time was valuable. The natural tendency would be to simplify and condense them, and when the original meaning of the picture was lost, they would naturally slur it. And we find it in the letters PP and X of the Maya alphabet, where the figure of the human face remains only in root lines. All right, so real quick, let's go back to the table. Just want to go ahead and go over this table with you guys. So it says Maya, the first 2 Maya, like this is a little older, this is a more modern Maya. And then we got supposed intermediary forms from the stone of Moab. So this is Moabite stone, which is basically Paleo-Hebrew, a form of Paleo-Hebrew, Phoenician. And then it says Archaic Phoenician. See, it's almost the same. Then it says Phoenician, Carthaginian, all right. And it says Old Greek, Old Hebrew, the Old Hebrew, right? Samaritans, the Samaritans. Remember, they were mixing with Danites, Samaritans. Ethiopian, the Ethiopian, and then Irish. You see this? Irish. Why Irish up in here? Gaelic. What does Gaelic have to do with the Americas? Irish. Later Greek, you see? And then hieroglyphic Egyptian. Hieroglyphic Egyptian, sorry. All right, so we're gonna go. The first one is A. You see, it looks like a boot in Maya. And you see how it can almost be like a boot when by the time it gets to Paleo-Hebrew. You see that it's like a backwards B or a D right here. See the boot? It's a little different, but that's what they're saying right here. We know that's the Aleph in the Hebrew. All right. And then look at this B. And they make it a CG. You see the C in there? Look like Pac-Man. All right, then like a GG. Then see how it becomes? It became a B. Then we got a G over here. Look at that. What's that? Teeth. Then it becomes just the teeth. See? Then the D, the he, or the ha. Or the ha, right? See, we know this letter in Paleo-Hebrew. V. All right, the different forms of all these. Look at this one right here. XX, look at that. See that? Looks like a mouth with teeth, and then it becomes letters, like just stick figures, and then it just becomes a sound. Wow. Look at that, the comb up here. See the feather or comb? And this became, wow, the K. The L. Got an M. Backwards MW, look at that. N. You can see how N was an S. Just flip it, right? Just flip it, you get the N. Get that, right? Look at this, as it says X. Well, and so on. The same tendency is plainly shown in the two forms of the letter H as given in Landa's alphabet. The original form is more elaborate than the variation of it. The original form is, see the original form? The variation is given as. Now let us suppose this simplification to be carried a step farther. We have seen the upper and lower parts of the first form shrink into a smaller and less elaborate shape. Let us imagine that the same tendency does away with them altogether. We would then have the letter H. All right, you see how that could become H of the Maya alphabet represented by this figure. You see this figure and this figure, right? Now, as it takes less time to make a single stroke than a double one, this will become in time, right? We turn now to the archaic Greek and the old Hebrew, and we find the letter H indicated by this sign. All right, look at that. It's the same thing. Maya alphabet, look at this. Maya, Hebrew, Greek, Maya, Hebrew, Greek, precisely the Maya letter H, simplified. We turn to the archaic Hebrew and we find it, same thing. Look at that. Now it is known that the Phoenicians wrote from right to left, and just as we in writing from left to right slope our letters to the right, so did the Phoenicians slope their letters to the left. Hence the Maya sign becomes in the archaic Phoenician this, all right? So they sloped it, look at that. In some of the Phoenician alphabets, we even find the letter H made with the double strokes above and below as in the Maya H. The Egyptian hieroglyphic for H's, while Che is, all right, almost looks the same, right? In time, the Greeks carried the work of simplification still farther and eliminated the top lines, as we have supposed the Atlanteans to have eliminated the double strokes, and they left the letter as it has come down to us, H. Look at that. They just break a little bit right here and add the. Now, it may be said that all this is coincidence. If it is certainly remarkable, but let us go a step farther. We have seen in Landa's alphabet that there are two forms of the letter M. The first is, but we find also M combined with the letter O, A, and E, says Landa in this form. All right? Remember, we got this in Queen Mu, Ma, Yak, Ma, Yak. And the M here is certainly indicative of the central part of this combination, the figure. Boom. So we already got this in Queen Mu's book, right? He broke that down heavily. Where does that come from? It is clearly taken from the heart of the original figure wherein it appears. What does this prove? That the Atlanteans or Mayas, when they sought to simplify their letters and combine them with others, took from the center of the ornate hieroglyphical figure some characteristics marked with which they represented the whole figure. Now let us apply this rule. We have seen in the table of alphabets that in every language from our own day to the time of the Phoenicians, O has been represented by a circle or a circle within a circle. Now, where did the Phoenicians get it? Clearly from the Mayas, of course. Remember, we got the 0 and the O over here. There are two figures for O or 0 in the Maya alphabet. They are this one and this other one. Now, if we apply the rule which we have seen to exist in the case of the Maya M to these figures, the essential characteristics found on each is the circle. In the first case, pendant from the hieroglyphic, in the other, in the center of the lower part of it, and that this circle was withdrawn from the hieroglyphic and used alone in the case of the M is proved by the very sign used at the foot of Landa's alphabet, which is, Landa calls this Ma, Me, or Mo. It is probably the latter, and it is in we have the circle detached from the hieroglyphic. We find the precise Maya O, a circle in a circle, or a dot within a circle, repeated in the Phoenician forms of O, thus this one and this one, right? And by exactly the same forms in the Egyptian hieroglyphics in the runic. We have the circle in the circle. In one form of the Greek O, the dot was placed alongside of the circle instead of below it, as in the Maya. Are these another set of coincidences? Take another letter, the letter N of the Maya alphabet is represented by this sign itself, probably a simplification of some more ornate form, like almost an ant or a serpent, right? This is something like a naga serpent. This is something like our letter S, but quite unlike our N. But let us examine into the pedigree of our N. We find in the archaic Ethiopian a language as old as the Egyptian, and which represents the Kushite branch of the Atlantean stock, the Kushite branch, the Kushite, Kush Hamites, the Hamite branch of the Atlanteans that went over there, Phoenicians, just like Ruali said, right? Who the Phoenicians are. The sign for N, Na, is in archaic Phoenician, it becomes still closer to the S shape. All right, so it's almost like a S, right? They're telling you straight out, look, this is the Maya, and this is the Kushite Atlantean Hamitic, right? Look at that, Phoenician. And in Phoenician, even this, almost an S, or in this form, right? Look at that. We have but to curve these angles to appropriate it very closely to the Maya. So I know it's a little confusing what he's trying to tell you, but he's trying to point out certain things that as logical people we can point out is know the origin, because if the Mayas have it, imagine, then they have other things. Where's the true origin of this? What are they really speaking? You know, in Troy, this form was found like this. The Samaritans make it. See how it flipped? The Old Hebrew, the Moab stone inscription is look. It starts looking different, right? Like a Y almost. The latter Phoenicians simplified the archaic form still further until it becomes, look at that, almost a 7. Then it passed into the archaic Greek form is the latter Greeks made the N. You see, they just kept flipping it and flipping it. It's just like a backwards S or C, from which it passed into the present form, N. All these forms seem to be representations of a serpent, like I said earlier. We turn to the Valley of the Nile. We find that the Egyptian hieroglyphic for N was the serpent, S. Look at that. Like we're saying, oh really? Just like the Maya, right? The Pelasgians N was this. The Arcadian, same thing, and Etruscan S, same thing. Can anything be more significant than to find the serpent, the sign for N in Central America, and in all these old world languages? Can it be such a coincidence? Now turn to the letter K. The Maya sign for K is, right, this one right here. This does not look much like our letter K, but let us examine it, following the precedent established for us by the Mayas in the case of the letter M. Let us see what is the distinguishing feature here. It is clearly the figure of a serpent standing erect, with its tail doubled around its middle forming a circle. It has already been remarked by Savilloni that this erect serpent is very much like the Egyptian Uraeus, an erect serpent with an enlarged body, a sacred emblem found in the hair of their deities. We turn again to the Valley of the Nile. Oh, you see this little serpent right here? And we find that the Egyptian hieroglyphic for K was a serpent with a convolution or protuberance in the middle, precisely as in the Maya thus, all right? This was transformed into the Egyptian letter, all right? The serpent and the protuberance reappear in one of the Phoenician forms of K, while in the Punic we have these forms, all right? Look at this K. Now, suppose a busy people trying to give this sign, instead of drawing the serpent in all its detail, they would abbreviate it into something like this. Now we turn to the ancient Ethiopian sign for K or Ka, and we have, or the Himyaritic Arabian, while in this one, in the Phoenician it becomes, look at that, backwards K. So you see how this became K, or backward K, this became from this. See what he's letting you know, he's showing you how it's just changing. And in the latter Greek, when they changed the writing from left to right, look, left to right, they made us backwards, right? It's a whole process. So that the two lines projecting from the upright stroke of our English K are reminiscences of the convolution of the serpent in the Maya original and Egyptian copy. All right, that was deep right there. Turn now to the Maya sign for T. It is this. You see that? What is the distinction mark above this figure? It is the cross, composed of two circle lines, thus like this, right? The cross, T, the Tau. It is probable that in this Maya sign, the cross is united at the bottom, like a figure 8. Here again, we turn to the Valley of the Nile. We find that the Egyptian hieroglyphic for T is, look, same thing. Let's go back, same thing. Look what's inside of here. Same thing. Look at that inside. See that? Zoom in. You see that? It's the same thing as the Egyptian. See? Same thing. Alright? That's what he's showing you. And in the Syriac T is same thing too. We even find the curved lines of the Maya T, which give it something of the appearance of the numerical 8, repeated accurately in the Mediterranean alphabet. Thus, the Punic T repeats the Maya form almost exactly. Look at that, almost like an X. Right? Now, suppose a busy people compelled to make this mark every day for thousands of years and generally in a hurry, and the cross would soon be made without curving the lines. It will become an X. Fast, boom. But before it reached even that simplified form, it had crossed the Atlantic and appeared in the archaic Ethiopian sign for Tasa. Thus, look, it was already over there. And the archaic Phoenician, the sign for T is, look at this, the cross X, little tilted, and X. The oldest Greek form is, look at that, boom, or X, and the later Greeks gave it to the Romans as T, a T, and modified this into minus. The old Hebrew gave it as an X, you see, the old tau, and the cross, you see, that's the letter T in Hebrew, Paleo Hebrew, same thing, cross, right, as that Maya glyph. The Moab stone as, again, an X. This became in time a T, or a cross, and T, all right? See how letters transform, where they're getting it from. Take the letter A. In the Maya, there are 3 forms given for this letter. The first is the symbol, right? The third is like the boot-looking thing. The first looks very much like the foot of a lion or tiger, like this one. The third is plainly a foot or boot, a boot, right? If one were required to give hurriedly a rude outline of either of these, would not he represent it as thus? Look at that. And we not conceive that this could have been in time modified into the Phoenician A, which was, you see, Phoenician A. The A is this. It's the same thing. It looks like this, right? A boot. The hieratic Egyptian A was this. The ancient Hebrew, which was, or again like an A, tilted. The ancient Greek was the foot reversed, right? They put it backwards, going up. The latter Greek became our A. See what A? The paw of a lion or jaguar. Originally, that's what it was. Turn next to the Maya sign for Q, or Ku. It is this hieroglyph. Now, what is the peculiarity of this hieroglyph? The circle below is not significant, for there are many circular figures in the Maya alphabet. Clearly, if one was called upon to simplify this, he would retain the 2 small circles joined side by side at the top, and would indicate the lower circle with a line or dash. And we turn to the Egyptian Q. We find it in this shape. Right, this is the shape. If we turn to the Ethiopian Q, or Kwa, we find it in this shape, or a Kwa, while the Phoenician comes still nearer the supposed Maya form in, look, almost look like the Disney symbol, right, signature, right? The Moab stone was the Himalaic Arabian form, and the Greek form, which graduated into the Roman Q. But a still more striking proof of the descent of the Phoenician alphabet from the Maya is found in the other form of the Q, the Maya Ku, which is, look, a circle and an X. Now, if we apply the Maya rule to this and discard the outside circle, we have this left. In time, the curved line would be made straight and the figure would assume this form. And next step would be make the cross on the straight line. Thus, one of the Phoenician forms is, and can all this be accidental? All right, so yeah, it keeps going with all the letters. It starts breaking it down. He starts explaining how it can become, even this one's interesting, you see. And then the P goes over that. I mean, we saw the table, how it changed in all of them. And, he's basically explaining the same thing. So just want to get to a specific part of the book. But yeah, he's going over all the glyphs and stuff and how they can become what they become today, or what we know as Hebrew or Greek or whatever, right? Roman, Latin. Continuing, says, it would appear as if both the Phoenicians and Egyptians drew their alphabet from a common source, of which the Maya is a survival. Where do they draw their source from? The people over here in America. but did not borrow from one another. They didn't borrow from one another. They got it from a common source, though. They followed out different characteristics in the same original hieroglyphics, as for instance in the letter B, and yet I have shown that the closest resemblances exist between the Maya alphabet and the Egyptian signs in the CHTIKLMNOQNS, 11 letters in all. In some cases, as in the N and K, the signs are identical. The K in both alphabets is not only a serpent, but a serpent with a protuberance or convolution in the middle. If we add to the above B and U referred to in the Proceedings of the American Philosophical Society, we have 13 letters out of 16 in the Maya and Egyptian related to each other. All right? Can any theory of accidental coincidences account for all this? And it must be remembered that these resemblances are found between the only two phonetic systems of alphabet in the world. It's the only two that exist, the Maya and Phoenician and Egyptian. They were the only people who actually had phonetic alphabets. What is the coincidence in that? Who's older? Who actually has an origin story other than just saying God gave it to them, right? Letters have an origin story. Sounds, hieroglyphics have an origin story with the Maya. Continues, says, it is probable that a full study of the Central American monuments may throw stronger light upon the connection between the Maya and the European alphabets, and that further discoveries of inscriptions in Europe may approximate the alphabets of the New and Old World still more closely by supplying intermediate forms. We find in the American hieroglyphics peculiar signs which take the place of pictures, and which probably, like the hieratic symbols, mingled with the hieroglyphics of Egypt, represent alphabetical sound. For instance, we find this sign on the walls of the palace of Palenque, right? This sign right here. This is not unlike the form of Phoenician T used in the writing. See? Very similar. Look at that inside. Look at that. And backwards. We find also upon these monuments the letter O represented by a small circle and entered into the many of the hieroglyphics. We also find the Tau, the sign for the T or the cross, right? Often repeated. Also the sign which we have supposed to represent B. Also this sign, which we think is the simplification of the letter K, also this sign, right? So all these signs is finding on the temple, he's saying. All right, so I want to get to this part that it was really interesting. It says, one of the most ancient races of Central America is the Chiapanec, or Japanic, Japan, Chapanic. All right, get what I'm saying? I'm not saying they're Japanese. I'm saying, where does that word come from? Chapanec, a branch of the Mayas. So this is a specific clan or branch of the Mayas, and that's what I was trying to say earlier about how we think the Mayas, we start grouping different peoples together and we just all call them Mayas. All right, you gotta understand there's different peoples that you're associating as Maya. There are different peoples, different clans, different branches, sometimes even different, totally different tribes. So the Chapanec branch of the Mayas, specific name. They claim to be the first settlers of the country. Their legends tell us, from the east, from beyond the sea. And even after the lapse of so many thousand years, most remarkable resemblances have been found to exist between the Chapanec languages and the Hebrew. All right, again, who's the Chapanec? A branch of the Mayas. So yeah, so let's generalize like we always do. So the Maya language and the Hebrew. A what? A remarkable resemblance of the Maya language and the Hebrew. Or are we just talking about the Chapanec language? Or you want to get specific now? All right, let's get specific then. Right? Chapanec language and the Hebrew, the living representative of the Phoenician tongue. A living representative of the Phoenician tongue, the Hebrew, right? So that means the Chapanec was speaking what? The Mexican scholar Señor Melgar, North Americans of Antiquity, page 475, all scholarly sources, gives the following list of words taken from the Chapanec and the Hebrew. All right? Chapanec, Mayas, son, Ben, or Ben, Bin, Ben, Hebrew, right? Same thing. Daughter, Bats, Bath. All right? Are you seeing what I'm showing you? We're not Hebrews, Kurimeo. I'm not saying you're a religion. I'm telling you where they got the whole so-called Hebrew from. I'm showing you. You are the book. You are the people of the Bible. All right? Is the point. And again, This is a branch of the Mayas. So maybe another branch of the Mayas were other people in the Bible. Get what I'm saying? So Father, Abba, Abba, same thing. They're speaking in Hebrew. They're letting you know, right? You can go read it in North Americans of Antiquity. We're gonna get into all these books, right? Slowly but surely. So you guys probably don't believe this. Right? They're speaking in Hebrew. Star and zodiac, Shimak, Shema in Hebrew. King, Molo, Malok, Molo, Malok. Name applied to Adam, Abba, Abba. Afflicted, Shanam, Shanan, Hanan, Hanan, Hanan afflicted, Hanan. God, Elab, Elab, same thing. September, Tisiking, Tichidi, more, Chik, Chi. Rich, Chabim, Kabim, Chabik, son of Seth, Enot, Enos, son of Seth, Enot, Enos, to give, Botan, Botan, to give. That's why we find such extraordinary resemblances between the Maya alphabet and the Phoenician alphabet. We find equally surprising coincidences between the Chapanic tongue, a branch of the Mayas, and the Hebrew, a branch of the Phoenician. Attempts have been repeatedly made by European scholars to trace the letters of the Phoenician alphabet back to the elaborate hieroglyphics from which all authorities agree they must have been developed. But all such attempts have been failures. They haven't been able to figure it out because they don't want to tell you the truth. But here in the Maya alphabet, we are not only able to extract from the heart of the hieroglyphic the typical sign for the sound, but we're able to go a step farther and by means of the inscriptions upon the monuments of Chapan and Palenque, deduce the alphabetical hieroglyphic itself from an older and more ornate figure. We thus not only discover the relationship of the European alphabet to the American, but we trace its descent in the very mode in which reason tells us they must have been developed where? In America. All this proves that the similarities in question did not come from Phoenicians having accidentally visited the shores of America, but that we have before us the origin of the source, the origin, America, the origin, the very matrix in which the Phoenician alphabet was formed, and where? From the shores of America, the origin. That's where the Phoenicians, the so-called Phoenicians, that populated North Africa and Spain and Iberia, right? Some of them became Moors. That's where they came from Canaan, America. They developed, they brought their so-called Paleo-Hebrew, this old archaic form of pictograph that was coming from pictorial writings. They were trying to make it phonetic, make it into sounds, make it easier. The Phoenicians, then the Greeks, Latins, and all these other people. In the light of such a discovery, the inscriptions upon the monuments of Central America assume incalculable importance. Why wasn't this taught to us? Well, if we have such discovery, it is monumental. This is a big discovery. All right? This is very important. But this is from 1880s, right? They never told us this. They take us back to a civilization far anterior to the oldest known in Europe. They represent the language of antediluvian times. Antediluvian times, the language of the antediluvians, the oldest people on earth. From America, it may be said that it is improbable the use of an alphabet could have ascended to antediluvian times or to that prehistoric age when intercourse existed between ancient Europe and America, but it must be remembered that if the flood legends of Europe and Asia are worth anything, they prove that the art of writing existed at that date of the deluge and that records of antediluvian learning were preserved by those who escaped the flood, while Plato tells us that the people of Atlantis engraved their laws upon columns of bronze and plates of gold. Golden plates. What did the Mormons find in the caves? What did he find? John Smith, he found golden plates written on them. Golden plates telling the story. Right? Some say that's the Mi'kmaq language. It looked like an Egyptian form. If you know the old Mi'kmaq language, it resembles a very type of Egyptian, old Egyptian. All right, so they're telling us right here that what happened, these survivors, they put their tales and stories on plates of gold and columns. There was a general belief among the ancient nations that the art of writing was known to the antediluvians. The Druids believed in books more ancient than the flood. They styled them the books of Perilt, and the writings of Pridian or Hu. Caridwen consults them before the She prepares the mysterious cauldron, which shadows out the awful catastrophe of the deluge. All right, so people in these ancient times reading books.
See, it's odd.